You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds. I'm the owner of Summer Properties Northwest, Reynolds and Kline Appraisal, and your host of the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Talk about business, talk about real estate, talk about goings-on, stuff that's happening that impacts those kinds of things. Let's jump on into it. We've got a good one today. Hewlett Packard is yet another multi-billion-dollar company leaving California. They're going to none other than Houston, Texas. Let's jump on in. Let's see what's going on. We kind of know what's going on. Let's get the deets on this one, all right? Tech giant Hewlett Packard Enterprise moving Silicon Valley headquarters to Houston, Texas. Is everybody moving out of California and moving to Texas? I think so. It feels that way, doesn't it? Specifically, people up in California, they seem to, let's move to Austin. Let's move to Texas. Let's move to Dallas. Let's move to Houston. San Francisco. When an icon that helped build Silicon Valley decides to leave Silicon Valley, it may not be that big of a deal, says Dilawar Syed. Companies come and go. What's important is that we continue to build a pipeline of next generation of builders who create these amazing brands. And I think for that, Silicon Valley will always remain a key place, says Syed. He's the chairman of the Entrepreneurship Task Force, part of California Governor Gavin Newsom's Office of Economic Development. All right, you've got arguably the oldest computer company, probably major computer company in the United States and in the world for that matter. Let me read you just a little bit about Hewlett Packard. I'm going to read you like a couple of sentences here. We'll get a background for this. Everybody knows HP. I've got printers. I think Hewlett Packard printers are great. Their computers, I think they're okay, but they've got a ton of electronics out there that you don't even know about because they're inside all your computers and stuff. And their operating systems all over the world through all kinds of stuff. Hewlett Packard was founded by Bill Hewlett and David Packard in 1939. Their first product was an audio oscillator. And one of their first customers, Walt Disney used the oscillator to test audio equipment in the 12 specially equipped theaters showing Fantasia in 1940. And this joker is saying, Hewlett Packard is not that important. We're the entrepreneurship whatever from Governor Newsom, and we are bleeding billion-dollar companies like no state has ever bled before because of our brilliant leadership decisions. That's what that guy should be saying. Hewlett Packard entered the computer market with the HP 2116A in 1966, 2 years before this guy, me, pointing at myself, for those of you on the podcast, was born. I mean, that is an old, you think of computers and you think of all right, they had a couple in the 70s, more so in the 80s, the late 80s, personal computer became a thing. Apple had their deal, but Hewlett Packard making computers in 1966. And all of a sudden, them moving their headquarters, it's not really that big of a deal. It's just companies come and go. What's important is we continue to build a pipeline of yada, yada, yada. You're covering for losing yet another billion-dollar company. All right. He says that when it comes to entrepreneurship and innovation, nothing beats Silicon Valley except any other state that doesn't have your lack of social services and your massive state income tax, any other state. And given its ecosystem of talent, academics, and financing, there's nothing that beats Silicon Valley, except a lot of companies are leaving, aren't they? Yep. But despite that, Hewlett Packard Enterprises, one of two companies created from the split of HP, is moving its headquarters to Houston. The multi-billion-dollar tech giant, however, will keep some offices in San Jose. We're not going to move everybody out. We want to keep a little bit of a presence here because guess what? Silicon Valley in California, in all of its ups and downs and the way it's handling kind of business right now, it's kind of like Seattle. Seattle has become lately. You've got a job pool, right? You got a talent pool that you're not going to have in other places. Silicon Valley, I mean, who hasn't watched the show? Is it called Silicon Valley? I can't remember. That is a funny show. It's so ridiculous, but it's funny. And so we need more humor in the world because a lot of this stuff is just crazy. And if you focus on it too much, it will make your head spin. That's why you're watching me, because I don't take things too seriously. I give you my opinion, but I also laugh at myself and the situations that I'm covering because a lot of the times they are ridiculous. The latest company to exit Silicon Valley. Many cite the high cost of living and states hefty taxes as reasons. Syed admits there is room for reform. That sounds like a politician talking, right? But he doesn't see this as a trend. Really? Really? You don't see all these businesses leaving California in general as a trend? Okay, well, I'll let you run with that one. And he says taxes aren't always on top of mind for startups. I am going to say that is not true. Because if you're not looking at the tax liability for your company, you are not really a big boy or a big girl looking at the big picture. You are short-minded and you are short-sighted on how your company is going to survive. Because if you're in a high tax environment and you don't recognize the cost of taxes on your business, your startup is going to be a start fail. That's just me, a business guy who's been doing this since the 80s. What would I know? I don't own a tech company. But I mean, I couldn't possibly know that you actually do need to look at taxes to figure out where you're at. What do you think about, is, this is what this guy is saying. These are the reasons you don't really look at taxation. What you think about is, who is my team? Where can I find the best talent? Who are my investors I can work with? Where are other companies that I can get advice from? Because your direct competitor, that's the company, that's the guy you get your advice from. No. Companies I can get advice from that are literally a drive away, he says. Silicon Valley is incredibly competitive. They just eat their own. It's the way the tech world works, right? So this stuff, who is my team? Where can I find the best talent? I mean, you don't have to be in a certain location to do any of that. But when you are in a certain location that taxes you out the wazoo, guess what? Maybe you don't want to be there. So not only are Californians getting hit with an incredibly high cost of living, getting hit more so with that state income tax. So where can I find the best talent? Who are my investors I can work with? Do you need to be in a certain spot to make that happen? No. You get on the phone, you get on your Zoom call, you get on your whatever and make that happen. Ahmad Thomas is the CEO of Silicon Valley Leadership Group, a public policy association which was founded by Hewlett Packard's David Packard in the late 1970s. Situations like this are a real wake-up call to me. All right, so here's a real business guy. Situations like this are a real wake-up call to me, said Thomas. I think we have a lot of work to do to make sure that California remains tax competitive. So we do look at taxes. That is a factor for our businesses. Interesting. Along with tax policy, Thomas says it is critical to investment in infrastructures like transportation and affordable housing to create an environment where businesses can thrive if California wants businesses to stay. Just like Seattle, you got the Jumpstart tax, the Jumpstart Seattle, whatever it is. It's a tax that just basically taxes really rich companies because we're looking at them to solve the world's problems because they have a good business model, therefore tax them. Is that socialism? I'm not really sure. I'm not really clear on that, but I think that's the direction it's heading. And so if you want your business, if you want your state or your city to be attractive, don't tax the heck out of them. It doesn't work that way. Those businesses have options, and you know what? They say, oh, we're leaving. Kind of like Amazon is doing in Seattle. They're moving to Bellevue, where I am. That's what's going on. Give folks in our communities an opportunities to thrive and invest where investments need to be made, but also allow our companies to keep and preserve capital so they can reinvest and build and grow, explains Thomas. Most politicians, they talk about reinvesting and building and growing, but don't really understand what those terms mean in actual business day-to-day operations. And when you levy a heavy tax upon big companies, they will leave. And that's why Hewlett Packard, I guarantee you, they're out of there. They're like, we can do better elsewhere. Sudi Tronson is a former HP engineer and is now an intellectual property lawyer. She says she is sad to see HPE go. One of her concerns is when big companies leave, it can have a big impact on smaller firms, the trickle-down effect that I talk about all the time. Many of these smaller companies, let's say, if they are making something, they could be selling it to these larger companies that are around. Some of them are spinoffs, she said. Another issue is that she refers to as the commercialization Seattle Valley or Silicon Valley's culture. There's an industry that feeds off entrepreneurship every day of the week. There is somebody getting paid from some poor entrepreneur trying to get them to pitch to who knows who. Before, people used to help each other, and now there is none of that, explains Stronson. If people were coming here for that culture and that culture doesn't exist, what else do we have to offer? I don't know. Good weather? This is where we used to do business. This is where it always went down, so we're going to still stay here. You do have a job pool there, so there are things. I mean, let's be honest. Not everybody's going to leave Silicon Valley. And these news stories that I kind of cover here, these are the kind of the highlights. But there's enough major people and enough major industries leaving California, leaving cities, they're leaving Seattle, to go elsewhere. Maybe you go to the suburbs just outside of whatever jurisdiction is taxing you heavily. Maybe you move there to avoid that taxation. But this is a lot of what politicians are oblivious to, and that is the impact that their taxation has on businesses. Because a small percentage difference can have an enormous impact on your bottom line, because you carry that over throughout all your business throughout the year. And at the end of the year, you're like, wow, I paid a lot of taxes. Because everybody's got their hand out for taxes. You got state sales tax, you've got excise tax, you've got IRS income tax at the federal level. Everybody's just getting taxed like there's no tomorrow. And California, with their state income tax, I look at Joe Rogan. I'm out of here. He didn't even wait. He's just like, I'm gone. If we can't do comedy here in California, I'm gone. I'm moving down to Austin. That's what he's doing. And all these other big companies, like this guy from Newsom, Governor Newsom of California, he's trying to backtrack and make it seem like, this is no big deal. One of the oldest, biggest computer companies in the world. They're moving their headquarters out. They're moving to Houston, Texas. Companies come, companies go. No, that's not the case. California's bleeding companies. They're bleeding people. They're bleeding anybody who has money that doesn't want to give that money in the form of taxation. Another story, I'm kind of going off on a little bit of a tangent here. Another story that has been super interesting has been that in the pandemic, people have been consuming a lot of music, and these artists are selling off their master copies of their music. They're not giving away, that they're selling their libraries. Bob Dylan had one that I think his deal is between $300 and $400 million for over 600 songs over a 50 or was it 60 year. He recorded his first song in 1961. Man, is that like 60? That's like 60 years. Incredibly long, but 300 to 400 million for his catalog of music. Stevie Nicks, that's estimated. She sold off 80% of her catalog to I can't remember what company it was. 80% of her catalog went for about 100 million. Stevie Nicks of Fleetwood Mac and her solo career, good artist, but man, 100 million bucks. Bob Dylan, $300 to $400 million, and they can still make music and they can still make whatever money off that. They're just talking about selling their old stuff, but those people are not living in California typically. They are making a move, just like Joe Rogan did before he did his podcast deal with Spotify. I'm out of here. I'm not paying those kind of taxes. Not doing that. My financial advisors are like, you should move. And these people are like, okay, yeah. And it's because they've got so much other stuff going on in a state like California. And for you guys in California, thank you for tuning in. I'm not trying to rag on you, but you guys know the same deal that I do. It's just like Seattle. Not just like, we've got wildly different situations, but you've got some political stuff going on that you're sitting around going, man, how is this happening in my good state? and in my good city. This is crazy. I can't really blame people for going elsewhere. So as I see more and more news stories like this, I'll cover them. But I know I'd had a number of people, a number of viewers, a number of listeners say, hey, you got to cover the HP one. And so I did. So as we see more stories like this, I will cover them right here on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Why can't I say podcast? Don't know. That's it for me. Again, I'm Sean Reynolds from Summer Properties Northwest, Reynolds and Kline Appraisal. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.